Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about the full moon happening in Cancer on the 30th of December. So for those of you who are new to my channel, before we dive into the astrology and we are going to dissect the general astrological aspects for the day, as well as what is likely to happen, how this full moon is likely to influence each zodiac sign. But first, I wanted to flag that I am a Western tropical astrologer. I know I get a lot of questions about this. And secondly, I use the whole sign house system. And third, let me just say this at the very beginning. I offer personalized readings, including yearly forecasts, and you can reach out to me through my website, which is written in the stars-astrology.com. So, let's talk about the 30th of December, folks. It is the day that we have all been waiting for. I can probably imagine. It's over. It is almost over. 2020, folks. I can't believe we're here. It's been like Groundhog Day all year, and at the same time, so much has happened and so much has changed in such a short period of time. What a year. So what's going on? On the 30th of December, we have a full moon happening in the sign of Cancer at 9 degrees of Cancer, to be more precise. And on the actual day, we have the following aspects taking place in the sky. So the moon in Cancer is going to be sextiling Uranus in the sign of Taurus, whilst the sun in Capricorn, by the way, at a full moon, we have an opposition between the sun and the moon. So the sun is going to be in Capricorn, the moon is going to be in Cancer. The sun at the time of the full moon is going to be trining Uranus in Taurus. So we've got some very harmonious, very collaborative aspects to the planet of shock, disruption, and surprise, Uranus, on the day. At the same time, we also have a square that's been kind of like ongoing for quite some time this month in December between Venus and Neptune. Venus is going to be in Sagittarius and Neptune is going to be in Pisces. Venus is at 18 degrees of Sag and Neptune is at 18 degrees of Pisces. So would you look at that? It's as if we've got almost an exact square. It doesn't get stronger than that. On the same day, we've got, what else going on? We also have Mercury very close to the sun at 14 degrees. So depending what orb you use for conjunctions, you could call this a conjunction between the sun and Mercury. Mercury at 14 degrees of Capricorn is also in a sextile, and it's applying, which means that it's in development. It makes it a little bit stronger than if it were separating, if Mercury were kind of like past the 18 degrees of Capricorn. Mercury is also beautifully collaborating with Neptune at the time. So what does this mean collectively? How is this full moon likely to play out? So for starters, full moon are times of completion. They are times when we reach a pinnacle in a 6-month cycle. And this 6-month cycle actually started, let me tell you when. It started at the new moon in Cancer that happened on the 20th of July. So first things first, I would recommend kind of like having to think about what was going on in your life and what was happening in the world around the 20th of July, because there's going to be some sort of mirroring of events, of circumstances, of themes around us. Now, full moons are also times of crisis at times, because in order for something to be completed, first it's got to reach its top tier of crisis, of culmination, before it dies down. Full moons are also times of acknowledgement. They are times of reward. They are also times of reaping the results of the seeds that we have sown. And full moons in the same way that new moons are associated with a beginning, full moons are associated with an ending, a peak, and therefore after the peak, we have kind of like the dwindling down of events. Gotta say, this full moon is likely to be filled with surprises. Not that December hasn't been filled with surprises already. We have some massive changes. We've had some massive changes in energy and vibration throughout the whole of December. We've had the eclipse in Sagittarius. We've had Jupiter and Saturn move from Capricorn to Aquarius, and they are currently, at the time of the full moon, also in a conjunction. Saturn at 1 degree of Aquarius and Jupiter at 2 degrees of Aquarius. It's been a very memorable month, so to speak, and it is likely to end on the same memorable note, especially since the full moon is contacting both the moon and the sun. They are both contacting Uranus. Now, what I do like about the full moon is the fact that the aspects to Uranus are mostly, for the most part, they are harmonious. So they're not hard aspects, they're not squares, they're not oppositions. What I also like about this is that Mars is moving away from its square to Pluto. So if we did have a bit of a peak in anger and in frustration around the 23rd of December, when we had an exact square from Mars to Pluto, Mars in Aries to Pluto in Capricorn. Now this is dying down as well. Expect some more shocking news, folks. And now let us dive into the updates for each of the 12 zodiac signs. I do want to say the following. I strongly recommend that you listen to your rising sign first, and then if you want to the update for your sun sign. Why should you listen to your rising sign first? Because the rising sign is essentially where your own natal chart begins. It's how you approach the world. It's how your life began, astrologically speaking. It is the window through which you see the world and the world sees you in return. So it is where our material 3D lifetime experience commences. Now, some people ask me, why should we listen to our sun sign if the rising sign is so important? Well, I actually recommend you listen to both. For the number one reason being, the sun sign is associated with the ego and with what we consider to be our identity, whereas the rising sign is how the world sees us and also how we approach the world. So they're both important, but rising sign first before everything else. Now, my lovely Aries, Aries sun and Aries rising. The full moon on the 30th is happening in your 4th house in Cancer. By the way, I do want to flag the following. We can feel the effects of the full moon as early as 3 days before and 3 days after it actually takes place. So pay attention to what's going on and what's unfolding in your life as early as the 27th, 28th of December. What I really like for you, my lovely Aries, is the fact that you are coming to a completion of a home or family or residence related chapter in your life that started around the last couple of weeks of July. So the moon is going to be sextiling Uranus, the ruler of your 11th house of friends and long-term plans and goals and dreams. Uranus is going to be in Taurus in your 2nd house of money. And the sun, which is the ruler of your 5th house of fun and children and love, is going to be trining Uranus as well. So what's happening here is in the past 6 months, you may have been putting a great deal of time and effort and energy into a home-related matter. Maybe you've been helping a parent out. Maybe you have been taking on additional work in order to gain more money so that you can put it towards a new residence, or so that you can help someone in your family, or so that you can buy a new home. And I do see the results of your work making their way to you. And when I say work, I mean boy, have you been toiling. Have you been keeping your nose to the grindstone, my dear Aries? Very likely you will be receiving some very positive news related to the financial side of things. But this is not money that lands in your lap out of nowhere. This is money that has been earned with sweat, blood, and tears. I hope less blood, more sweat. And I really hope not that many tears, although tears may have been a prominent element in your experience in the past 6 months, especially career-wise. There's also most likely going to be a very positive acknowledgement of the work that you have been doing, both from your family and also from a figure of authority. Or it could also be that you are receiving a boost to your self-esteem coming from one of your parents or both of your parents. It's as if you are receiving recognition and your sense of confidence and sense of self-worth is going up, which is fantastic. Now, Venus is going to be in Sagittarius in your 9th house of the higher mind and of beliefs, squaring Neptune and Pisces in the 12th house. If you've been making any plans for this time, gotta put it out there, you may have overextended yourself a little bit, and they are likely to be thwarted or delayed. There's also a possibility of you being overly optimistic because it does feel like the tide has turned in your favor all of a sudden, and as I said, it's very well deserved. But I would strongly recommend, if you need to sign anything paperwork wise, or if you need to travel, or if you've got any sort of like documents or exams to hand in, please take extra time, because you may be a little bit too over the moon too soon, my dear Aries. Now, if you are a Taurus sun or a Taurus rising, the new moon is, the full moon is happening in your 3rd house in the sign of Cancer at 9 degrees of Cancer. And if you have any planets in cardinal signs around 9 degrees, the cardinal signs are Aries, Libra, Capricorn, and Cancer, you may very well feel the effects of the full moon even stronger because it's going to be squaring these planets. So, the full moon, which you're probably going to feel 3 days before, 3 days after the 30th, my dear Taurus suns and Taurus risings, is marking the end or the culmination of a chapter related to learning, related to studies, also related to siblings. So you may hear some very unexpected news coming your way from your siblings if you have any siblings. Now, the moon is going to be sextiling Uranus in your 1st house, and the sun in your 9th house is going to be trining Uranus in your 1st house of identity. So I'd interpret this in the 3D material realm as the completion of a learning and spirituality cycle that started on around the 20th of July when we had the new moon in Cancer. Whatever new set of skills you started learning more about around the end of July, you may be feeling a lot more confident about them right now, and you may be feeling ready to put them into practice. You've also got reasons to be proud of yourself because you may have some sort of like enlightenment moment where all of a sudden a lot of information and a lot of knowledge that may have been may have felt like it was mismatched, or you may not have been sure as to how to piece it together, you can see the common thread, and it's as if the puzzle is coming together. Now, if you have been handing in exams or completing any sort of studies related work, the results seem to be coming in 3 days before, 3 days after, and they seem to be very positive. If you're looking to travel around this time, I will put it out there, you're very likely to be on the road as well, around the 30th of December, give or take 3 days before, 3 days after. And the journey, although it's likely to be quite psychologically challenging, as in you may not have thought that you were able to make this journey. It's going to be absolutely worth it. So keep your schedule flexible, Taurians. That would be my recommendation. Now, Venus at the time is going to be in the 8th house of shared resources, squaring Neptune and Pisces in the 11th house of friends and long-term plans. You may miss out on some of the details, or you may, if you jump in too quickly, too soon, you may receive reproaches from like friends because you might have neglected them. Also, if you have been waiting for someone to pay a debt towards you, they may not be so quick to pay it back. So it might be a case of you having to reach out to them, which you don't really enjoy because it's ruining your mojo around the time, but you're going to feel good about it. Overall, you're going to be feeling good and excited about it. So be prepared to be adaptable around the time, my dear Taurians. Now, if you are a Gemini sun or a Gemini rising, on the 30th of December, you have a full moon happening in your 2nd house at 9 degrees of Cancer. And I would also urge you to pay attention to the 3 days before and 3 days after the 30th of December to see the effects unfold. Now, this is payday for you folks, Geminis all around. This is the moment in time when you are reaping the financial results most likely out of the work that you have been putting in the past 6 months. The 2nd house is associated with earned income. So I would not be surprised, although you might be surprised, I want to put it out there. I would not be surprised if money that you are not necessarily relying on, although you had done the work, makes its way to you. Now, why do I keep on mentioning the word surprise? Because we have Uranus, the planet of surprises, in the 12th house, which is associated with the shadow, with what you can't see, with what's happening behind the scenes. Uranus is going to be harmoniously aspecting both the moon and the sun at the time of the full moon. So maybe it's money that you weren't relying on. Maybe it's money that you weren't counting on. Maybe you had written it off. Maybe it's someone paying back their debt to you. Maybe you are all of a sudden receiving money that was owed to you that you may in turn, actually, let's put it out there, use to pay a debt, because we also have the 8th house of shared resources involved at the time of the full moon, or cover some of the financial overextension that you may find yourself in at the time of the full moon. So if you're spending too much money, let's say on gifts, for instance, you do seem to be receiving some sort of boon around the end of the month and using that to cover some of your existing possible debts. Now, there's also a very, very high likelihood, a very high possibility that what's happening around the 30th of December is also some sort of closure of a paperwork related matter or a legal matter, something that involved the courts, and it may very well rule in your favor because Uranus is the ruler of your 9th house, which is also associated with the law. Now, the one big caveat that I've got for you, as I do have for everyone else, is Venus is going to be in your 7th house of partnerships, squaring Neptune and Pisces in the 10th house for you. So there is a trap of possibly overextending yourself, over celebrating, over intoxicating yourself, over indulgence at the time of the full moon. So don't say I did not warn you about it, Geminis. Now, if you are a Cancer sun or a Cancer rising, my Cancerians brothers and sisters, I'm a Cancer rising myself. The full moon is happening in our 1st house. First of all, gotta tell you, when the full moon is happening in your 1st house, Cancerians, there is generally a feeling of exhaustion. It's like, oh my gosh, can I get a break? Can someone literally let me go to sleep because I have been burning the candles at both ends. So I would not be surprised if you felt a little tired 3 days before, 3 days after the 30th as well, my lovely Cancerians, especially Cancer risings. The first house is associated with the physical body. Now, this is also a very symbolic time. In what sense? You have been rebuilding your identity, Cancerians, pretty much since July, since the last couple of weeks of July, and you seem to have reached a new peak in defining your place in the world, defining your sense of identity. And I wouldn't be surprised also if you decided, in order to symbolically mark the occasion, if you decided to change your looks. And if you do all of a sudden decide to make a change looks-wise, I want to put it out there. The full moon is going to be in a beautiful aspect to Uranus, the planet of surprises. So even you might be surprised by how much this change in the physical aspect of you, how much it suits you. It feels very freeing. It feels very liberating. There is something about getting rid of something. So you might be chopping off your hair, for instance, or you might have lost a few pounds. There's something electrifying and something very freeing, very liberating about this full moon, because we've got Uranus involved that says, take off all of these elements that I don't need. They're weighing me down. So very, very exciting. Although I gotta say, you do seem to continue to be quite busy work-wise. You've got Venus in Sagittarius in the 6th house, squaring Neptune in Pisces in the 9th house. So you may continue to rack your brains as to how you're gonna fit all of this work in when you'd actually prefer to not work. You'd prefer to be traveling and having fun. So what can I say, Cancerians? It's a mixed bag, this full moon. Now, if you are a Leo sun or a Leo rising, the full moon is happening in your 12th house in Cancer at 9 degrees, and it's going to be triggering the 12th house, 6th house axis. So the moon's going to be in your 12th house. The sun's going to be in your 6th house. Now, I don't want to scare you off, and I know I receive so much flack whenever I say anything remotely negative. But I do want to put it out there. There may be some sort of like health-related matter that you may have to deal with around this time. It's as if it's reaching peak inflammation, because the full moon is a time of inflammation. So it can be some sort of acute condition. You may already be aware of it. You might have been aware of it for some time, but it's as if you can no longer ignore it. It's like, my body is screaming, you need to take care of me. Generally, when we've got a full moon in the 12th house that activates the 12th house, there is a significant improvement that can be made on one's physical health by resting. People underestimate the importance of rest, especially in our society. So if your body is saying, hello, I am breaking apart, consider it your cue to go to sleep, Leos, especially Leo risings. The interesting thing is, though, that I say interesting, that whilst you may be feeling a little bit under the weather physically, work-wise, you get like sudden acknowledgement and recognition, because we've got the moon in the 12th house sextiling Uranus and Taurus in your 10th house. So the year can end with an actual bang, like a promotion of some sorts for you, my lovely Leos. So well worth the work that you've been putting, the toil, the sweat that you've been putting in the past 6 months, my dear Leos. Now, if you are a Virgo suns and Virgo risings, the full moon is happening at 9 degrees of Cancer in your 11th house, and it is triggering the 11th and 5th house axis. So the 11th house is concerned with groups. The 5th house is concerned with individual creative self-expression. And it's going to be active 3 days before, 3 days after the 30th as well. Now, what is this likely to symbolize for you, my dear Virgos? A completion, a culmination in a long-term plan, in a long-term objective that also involved some sort of creative work, some sort of creative endeavor, because we've got that sun shining its light, its beautiful beams on the 5th house of creativity. It's also a time, I gotta say, it's a time of coming together with friends, with groups, with your community, of feeling loved, of feeling appreciated. And I don't know where in the world you are, but I do see very high chances of you traveling, especially far away from your place of residence, around the 30th of December. If not, it does seem to be a very, very social time regardless. I do see you surrounded by people at this time. The challenging part might be the fact that part of you would rather spend time alone with a romantic partner, or would rather be in the company of a romantic partner, not necessarily in the company of a group of people at the time, but groups of friends and the people in your life will all want a piece of you. And it's going to feel nice. It's going to feel welcoming. It's going to feel like like you belong in these groups. So enjoy the full moon, Virgos. Now, if you are a Libra sun or a Libra rising, the full moon on the 30th of December at 9 degrees of Cancer is happening in your 10th house of career and public reputation. Libras, you're probably going to feel it 3 days before, 3 days after the 30th of December as well. This is big. This is you getting recognition in your career, you possibly getting a promotion in your career, you possibly getting a new, snazzier, better paid, higher up the ranks job, my dear Libra. It's a position that seems to be contributing to your long-term ascension career-wise. So it's not a lateral move. It's a move that increases, enhances your status and your reputation, Libras, and it's well deserved. I mean, obviously. We've got Uranus in your 8th house, very, very beautifully aspecting the moon in the 10th house of career. The past 6 months haven't been easy. Let's put it this way. You may have felt opposed by the world around you. You may have felt like you've had adversaries and opponents and people pushing back on you over and over and over again. That's coming to an end, and it's coming to an end very soon. And you may be feeling like you are on your way out of this 6 months period that started in July, around the 30th of December. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if you received a bonus from work around this time, because Uranus in Taurus is in your 8th house of financial gifts at the time. Some of you may also be becoming parents at this time, because the full moon is happening on the 10th house, 4th house axis, which is also associated with parenthood. The lives of your parents are also very likely to come to the forefront of your mind around this time, my dear Libras. And I would also not be surprised at all, once again, if you received some sort of early inheritance. So I don't see you suffering. So I don't see you kind of like, there's nothing to be afraid of. It's like you're not losing a parent by any means, but there could be some sort of financial gift that is making their way to you from your parents, Libras. And last but not least, if you have been applying for a mortgage or for some sort of like a loan to put towards a home, you're probably going to hear about it. You're probably going to hear very positive news about it around the 30th of December, Libras. So a very, very good day. Now, if you are a Scorpio sun or a Scorpio rising, the full moon on the 30th of December at 9 degrees of Cancer is happening in your 9th house. And pay attention, please, 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 to the 3 days before, 3 days after the 30th of December, as well as try to remember what was happening in your life around the 20th of July at the new moon in Cancer. So this full moon is bringing in a completion, a culmination, an ending, a closure related to a ninth house matter. So this could be you graduating from a course of study, or receiving results for an exam or for several exams. You are achieving a higher level of knowledge and learning and wisdom around this time. And not only have you achieved it, and not only are you realizing you've reached this point, you seem to be also receiving some sort of formal recognition around it, because we've got the sun in Capricorn, and Capricorn is essentially concerned with institutions and with formal recognition. We've got the sun in Capricorn involved at the full moon, obviously, because the moon is opposing the sun. And we've also got a trine from Uranus in the 7th house. The 7th house, not only is it associated with partnerships, it's also associated with the others, with the public, with who we interact with. The 1st house is me. The 7th house is essentially everyone else. So, as I said, you may be receiving some sort of diploma, award, recognition. You might be graduating. You're receiving good news related to a course of study. And you're also feeling very appreciated by everyone else for it. They are recognizing that, they are acknowledging the fact that you're worthy of praise, essentially. Now, this can also be a time when you are traveling, my lovely Scorpios, to meet with a partner. Or let me put it out there, if you have a partner, you may be traveling with a partner, very impromptu, very kind of like out of the blue. A partner might surprise you. A romantic partner might surprise you with an unexpected trip, which is going to prove although stressful because it's last minute and you haven't planned for it, and you are, after all, a Scorpio, which is a fixed sign. So if there's one thing that Scorpios don't like, it's surprises. And still, this surprise, you're probably going to like, Scorpio, so play along with it. That's the way I'd deal with it. But hey, I'm not the one being surprised at the time. Last but not least, it is also a time when you are called out into the world, out in society. The 9th house is associated with society at large. People want to hear your opinions. People want to hear your take on things. They can be like a good few days where you are sharing your belief system with the external world, and they are challenging you to be more open to communication, which feels surprisingly good. Once again, Scorpio, so play along with it. Now, if you are a Sagittarius sun or a Sagittarius rising, the full moon on the 30th of December is happening in your 8th house in Cancer. Dun 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 dun. Pay attention to what was going on, Sagittarius, on the 20th of July. Because this full moon is the completion of a cycle that started around the 20th. And I would also pay attention to the 3 days before, 3 days after the 30th of December. This is a time when essentially what's very likely to happen is you may receive some sort of financial bonus from work, because we've got Uranus and Taurus in your 6th house of day-to-day work very beautifully aspecting both the sun and the moon, which are straddled across your money axis. You may also receive some unexpected, quite substantial return on investment on an existing investment. You may receive some sort of bonus from work, or you may receive a very appealing and quite impromptu offer, job-wise. It wasn't something that you've planned for. It wasn't something that you had factored in for the end of the year, but it's definitely going to be worth considering, if I may say so. Now, if you've been waiting for some sort of like paperwork to be completed related to your day-to-day job, it's probably going to be completed around this time and in your favor. So if you had any sort of worries along those lines, I would not be concerned at all, because people want to help you, and especially coworkers. You seem to be having some beautiful experiences, some positive like surprises making their way to you from coworkers, from the people that that you interact with on a day-to-day basis at work. Now, if you are a Capricorn sun or a Capricorn rising, the full moon is happening on the 30th of December in your 7th house of marriage and long-term partnerships. I would first and foremost look back at the themes that emerged in your life around the 20th of July this year, when we had the new moon happening in the sign of Cancer, which essentially symbolized the beginning of the 6-month stage, which is coming to an end around the 30th of December. The moon is going to be sextiling Uranus in Taurus at 5 degrees of Taurus. And so is the sun in your first house, going to be trining Uranus in the 5th house. It's a time of very positive developments for you romantically and partnership-wise. Some Capricorn risings in particular, might actually get engaged around this time. For all those of you who are single, you may very likely encounter someone who can turn into a long-term partner. If you're not interested in either of these, can I just say, Uranus very nicely aspecting the full moon in the 5th house makes you feel very much ready for a party, very much ready for a celebration, which you are absolutely in your right to do after 3 years Saturn has made its way out of your own sign. So you may be in the mood to flirt, you may be in the mood for love, you may be in the mood for fun, for romance, and people around you are going to be in the mood for it as well, especially romantic partners. But it doesn't even matter if you don't have a romantic partner or not. There is going to be sparks in the air, and you are absolutely going to enjoy it. And you're gonna let your hair down. Just to put it out there, you are absolutely going to let your hair down at the time. Now, if you are an Aquarius sun or an Aquarius rising, the full moon, my Aquarius brothers and sisters, I'm Aquarius sun, is happening in our 6th house of day-to-day work in Cancer at 9 degrees of Cancer, and it is mirroring the themes and the events and the circumstances that emerge in our lives around the 20th of July at the new moon in Cancer this summer. So what is this likely to bring? Well, can I just say that you are reaching a point of culmination, a pinnacle in a work-related project which has been possibly eating up a little bit at your mental wellness and well-being. So the project is coming to an end. It can be for some Aquarians that a job in itself is coming to an end, but you seem to be very pleased with the results. I'd say surprisingly pleased with the results, since the new moon is going to be sextiling Uranus in the 4th house. And it almost feels like a rite of passage. So it may have been a very stressful 6 months. You may have had to collaborate, to cooperate with others a lot more than you wish to, because even though you're a very socially oriented sign, you do prefer to keep your distance and only engage in social activities when you feel like it. So in the past 6 months, you may have had to engage in these type of activities a lot more. It's paying off. That is what I'm trying to say. Now, if you have started some sort of like health regimen, or if you have been making any sort of improvements to your daily schedule and routine, you are very likely going to start seeing the results as early as the 30th of December, 3 days before, 3 days after. Now, the only caveat for this full moon is please, please, please don't feel like you have all the money in the world and start spending on trifles, because there is a danger here of like overindulging and overextending yourself financially. You're feeling good, you're feeling proud of yourself, you're like, yes, I've made it, woohoo! And then you've got Venus in the 11th house, squaring Neptune in your 2nd house of money. So make sure that any sort of financial details are being taken care of with a fine-tooth comb, Is that a thing? I'd bring Virgo in to look to pour over your contracts or your invoices. Now, if you are a Pisces sun or a Pisces rising, my lovely Pisces, the full moon is happening on the 30th of December, 3 days before, 3 days after, in your 5th house of love, romance, children, creativity, and fun in Cancer. First and foremost, have a think about what was going on in your life around the 20th of July, because there's very likely going to be some sort of reflection between the themes that were prominent in your life at the time and the themes that are going to re-emerge at this time of the full moon, because a 6-month cycle is ending. It started with a new moon in July and it's ending with the full moon now in December. You are reaching an ending, a closure, but also a culmination, a pinnacle when it comes to a creative project. What I really like about this is the fact that both the moon and the sun are in a very nice aspect to Uranus. So if you have been pitching some sort of creative project, Uranus in the 3rd house is very likely to bring you good news. If you have been thinking that you can't meet up with your community or your siblings around this time, surprise, surprise, you may actually indeed meet with them, because Uranus, so nicely aspected in the 3rd house of social interactions, is probably gonna find a way. Like, maybe we can't see it just yet, but Uranus has a way for us. There can also be a completion, a culmination of a romantic chapter in your life, so the crystallization of a relationship, or the crystallization of a relationship through a baby, through a creative project of its own. That's a possibility. If none of this happens, I do have to say it can be a time filled with romance, an unexpected romance at that. Some sparks in the air. I really love aspects from Uranus to anything love related, because it gives like a very electrifying, magnetic, unpredictable feel about it. And I realize I'm very biased and subjective because I'm an Aquarius and I've got Uranus. I'm best friends with Uranus. So not everyone might feel the same way. But if you allow yourself to think out of the box and to go with the flow and to essentially be open to new innovative experiences with a romantic partner, the result may prove very much worth it. So I hope you all have a fabulous end of the year, folks. Please share. Don't forget to share your full moon experiences and your end of the year stories in the comment section below. I actually love reading those throughout the month. And don't forget, for the year ahead, you can contact me for one-to-one consultations and personalized readings through my website, which is writteninthestars-astrology.com. See you on the other side, folks, in 2021.